So after having rendered out all three layers, I'll open the browser and have a look in the render pictures folder. We have our two single image pics of the ground and the sky dome, and we have our 300 frame sequence of the snow. So we need to switch over to Exercise Compositor. We'll go into the View Layouts Compositing option, and we're going to pull in the result of the three render passes. So I'll click on the passes, pull down, and I'll get all three passes. I can of course get them individually here as well. So I'll get all passes, and I'm going to have the ground act as the foreground layer for my first set of comps, and the sky dome, if I just click on V here, sky dome act as my background. Of course I have an alpha here in the background, but the ground plane will be covering that up, and if I look at the alpha of the ground pass, you can see that we have a nice cutout of the mountain and tree line. So to composite the foreground with alpha over the background, we're going to use one of the composite set of tools, and we're going to use a simple over, which takes a background image in the leftmost green input, takes a foreground image and its alpha in the foreground rightmost slot of the over. And if I press V to view the result of the over, I have the image recomposited again. Now to layer the snow in, we can do a couple of different things. Likely we're going to take the snow and blur it. If we look at the snow, we can view it, and if we look at its alpha, you can see its alpha has got a solid white cutout. We can either choose to use the white kind of blended blue color, RGB color of the snow as our alpha if we choose to, rather than the stark black and white. If we edit the snow pass, we can output our image as an RGBA node, or we can output it as an alpha channel and create alpha based on the luminance values found in the RGB channels. So using the RGB, if you have a lot of grayscale, high grayscale, low black values, can be used to generate your alpha. In any event, I'm going to use the RGBA as is, and I'm going to start by trying an over node to view the result. So I have a result that looks something like that, and if I was to take that image and blur it a little bit, I'd be able to soften the looks of the flakes. I could also try and use some of the math composite nodes and perhaps screen the snow particles over top of the blue background. Now the reason I'd want to do this here is because the snow layers are going to be reacting to light in the scene, and using the background colors of the foreground and background layers could actually tint the particles and kind of give them a false illumination. So if I was to try the math composite, I'll view the result, and you can see now the particles are definitely getting tinted from the background environment. If I was to edit the result, I can obviously fade it out to sort of fine-tune the effect. Or I can use some of the other tools like adding brightness. Again, adding brightness based on the alpha channel or based on the RGB channels, again, will just blow the image out. So I would likely use a screen node and take the mix level down a little bit to add some sort of transparency to the particles. From there we can add the blur effect in by taking our snow pass and blurring it and its alpha and recombining it with our math composite. So I'll take the over node and I'll actually delete it. To find the blurs, you need to look under the filter set of tools, and I'll use a standard Gaussian blur. I'll left click and middle click to drop it into my graph. And I'll take the Gaussian blur input and use the snow pass output to drive the blur. And if I view the result and click edit, I'll lock down the property page. I'll recombine that result with my math composite, so I get something like that. Now if I want to, I can adjust the width and the height blur, and this will just help to soften the snow a little bit more. So I'm actually going to drive the height with the width by holding down the green widget for the width and dragging it onto height, so just setting an equality expression. And then I can go ahead and just hold down shift and adjust the sliders until I'm happy with a soft look of snow I want. So now when I hit play, I have a snowfall that looks a little better. We can layer in some additional clouds in here, but this is the end of the snowfall part of the ice tutorial. So we've used a simple particle system to generate a snowfall, rendered the snow and the environment off in layers, and recombined them in the compositor. The final step in our case here would of course be to output the images. And if I kind of bring the result of the composite down into the final file output, I can edit it and point my final comp to the composites folder of the XSI 7 training project. We'll call this the final snow comp. Rendered as a Softimage pic over 300 frames. And all the settings look good. Square pixels, 24 frames per second. I'll do a final save and then hit render.